Don't you dare change that channel or turn away, because it's another Tuesday, so coming up on Worlds Asunder.
So again, you got to look at their motivations. Why are they acting the way that they are, right? Because what we hate about characters is what are the things that they do. The things that they do are what push us to either love them or hate them.
Yeah. As storytellers, we want to capture the hearts, minds, and imaginations of our readers, mainly through our expertly crafted worlds.
Creating new worlds in any genre might seem like a daunting task, but you don't have to reinvent the wheel for every story.
Welcome, weary writers, to Worlds Asunder, a world-building and writer's life podcast.
My co-host is David Shadoin, better known as Shady. It's not just a descriptor, it's also his moniker.
And she's H.Y. Gregor, or you can call her Haley, your friendly post-apocalyptic wasteland elf.
Together, we've got enough published to fill a small shelf, but why should you listen to us? Because we called in some favors.
Every other week, we bring you the best and brightest to give you the tips and tricks on world building and character building like the pros. So, open up your ear holes.
Get out your pen and paper.
And get ready for us to tear Worlds Asunder. You want to build better characters? Well, we brought back Kacey Ezell to do It Builds Character Part 1. Enjoy. Welcome to Worlds Asunder, here at FactoryCon, the last FactoryCon. Yeah. We kicked off Worlds Asunder with Chris Kennedy as our first guest, and we were down here. We've spent the last couple days hanging out with all the Chris Kennedy publishing authors.
Well, not all of them.
Well,
all the ones who could.
All the ones that could be here.
Right.
All the ones that can make it. They're the only ones that exist. I have object permanence issues. So the only podcast occurring at the last FactoryCon. That's what we'll claim this week.
This is an exclusive.
Yeah, exclusive interview.
That's right.
That will never happen again. I am your host, Shady David Shadoin. You'll see this week there's only one other person in the screen, and it is not my current co-host, H.Y. Gregor. She couldn't record today, but she will be back with a vengeance. Probably. So don't fret too much. I know everybody else who watches this show is really watching it for her and not for me.
I mean, she is the cute one.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. For
sure. However, on this show today, I have a very wonderful and special guest. She is a retired helicopter pilot. Mm-hmm. Twice retired helicopter pilot.
Yeah.
She has written... you've written alt history, you've written fantasy of all kinds, you've written sci-fi, but the things that you are most known for is the way you write your characters and being able to punch people in the gut with those characters.
Not literally.
Well, sometimes literally.
I don't go around punching people in the stomach.
Not you, your characters.
Well, but they're not real people.
They're not real people. It still hurts. My guest today, she wanted to be a dragonrider when she was little.
Yeah.
Kacey Ezell.
Yeah. Hi. Nice to not see any of you because you're behind a camera. So.
And it's funny. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch the show, but I'm pretty sure that I brought your name up on more than one occasion.
Oh, good.
So now we've Beetlejuiced you onto the show.
Awesome. I will try to live up to that. So
yeah. As my inspiration for getting into writing and for being my constant co-author.
Inspiration.
There you go.
Yeah. Also known as
I was being nice.
Kidnapper.
Yeah.
Coercive force.
Yeah.
But thank you for saying nice things about me behind my back. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you know. It's about the only time I say nice things.
I know, right?
Behind people's back. Everybody thinks I hate them until they watch a show that they weren't on.
Right, yeah. It's a twist.
Yeah.
Shady talks shit in front of people and then says nice things behind their back. It's
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I brought up the kind of the characters and the gut punch stuff is because we did bring you on here today to talk a little bit of character building.
Yeah.
And the first one I want to bring up is the Psyche of War series. Or really, this is kind of where that question is coming from. You wrote a couple characters who have a very emotional journey that people can either relate to or not. Some of us can relate to because we've gone through the military training thing. We've understood where a lot of it drew from. But you do a really good job of creating a character that even if you haven't, your audience understands that character's motivations.
Well, thanks.
So when you go to push a character like that, somebody that's really complex, because your second book, aptly named,
right,
The World Asunder.
World Asunder, yep.
Who we swear we didn't steal the title from.
I was here first.
You were.
Just for the record.
You were. But you took essentially your antagonist, who's not necessarily a bad guy, right? They might have been the bad guy in the first book, but not a bad guy.
I mean, she was a Nazi.
She was a
there's
Nazi.
That. Yeah.
But you made it. You gave her a journey too.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Where do you start when you're building a character that you're trying to kind of be able to relate to everybody?
So, I feel a little bit like David Banner in the Marvel movies here. My secret is that I'm always angry. No, my secret is that I want all of my characters to be that relatable. Because in my head, a character is not interesting unless they are relatable. And the purpose of doing that is the kind of fiction I write, very character-driven fiction, right? So the thing that is moving the story forward is always going to be, in my books, the actions, decisions, and ultimately the thought processes and emotions of the character, right? Like if you get down to like causal factors, to borrow a term from our shared Air Force experience. So those things have to be represented, they have to be real, and they have to be understandable to anyone who might be reading them, right? Yeah. I drew a lot of inspiration from, and I always misquote this, and I know someone very smart said it, and I am a terrible person for not remembering specifically which smart person said this, but someone once said, and it was very pithy, that every villain is the hero of their own story, and that made a huge impact on me, right? Because if you think about it, it's true. And sort of the corollary to that then, if you extrapolate it a little further, is that every hero is probably the villain of someone else's story. And one of the recent really great illustrations of that is the show Cobra Kai, right? So I saw the original Karate Kid when I was a kid, because that's how old I am. And, you watch it and you see, Daniel, and you see Johnny, and Johnny is this rich kid with blonde hair, and, he's a black belt in karate, and he's good looking, and he and his buddies try to jump Daniel, and they beat him up and all this kind of stuff. And you think of him as the bully the entire time. The reason I fell in love immediately, and it's campy, right? Like, it's an 80s movie. It's so campy. Yeah. But, and I was always like, I liked the movie as a kid, but it was never like, oh, I love the Karate Kid. You know what I mean? Yeah. But when I saw the first season of Cobra Kai, and it's done from Johnny's perspective, and there's this, I forget who he's talking to, but he's talking to someone, and he's talking about Daniel, who, they're adults at this point, and Daniel's a successful car dealer or whatever, and he's like, I hate that guy. He basically made my entire life miserable in high school. He beat me up, he stole my girlfriend, and you think about it, and all of those things are true and represented in the movies, but you're not used to thinking about them in those terms because it's always been presented from Daniel's point of view. So that to me just really illustrated that, like, really great characters are multi-dimensional, which, okay, newsflash there. Like, we've always known that. We talk about how we don't want to write cardboard characters or two-dimensional characters. So fair enough. But how do we do that? And the answer is, at least for me, the answer for creating a multi-dimensional character is to give them motivations that are understandable to the audience, that sometimes conflict, but that can show, that makes sense from their point of view, but perhaps don't make sense from their antagonist's point of view, if that makes sense. Or if they don't make sense, they seem bad, right? If we're going to put labels like good and bad on certain actions, yeah. One
of the classic examples of kind of flopping it, right? So every villain is a hero in their own story came out of the writer's strike back in 2008, 2009, or maybe it was 2010. The Dr. Horrible sing-along blog, right? They flipped that on its head and gave you a show from the perspective of what was supposed to be the villain. And then, of course, you have kind of the jerk Captain Hammer, who has some great moments, but at the same time, like he was kind of easy to root against from that point of view. And so now it's always made me wonder if they go back and refilm it from Fillion's side. Like,
what would that look like?
Would the scenes alter?
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's interesting to think about for sure. You know, and I mean, you mentioned my Psyche of War book. So in the first book, the main character is an American aircrew woman, which wasn't a thing in the context that I wrote, but that's why it's alternate history, right? So so she's flying on the B-17s, and that story is very much my love letter to military aviation history. And then she ends up basically being chased throughout occupied Europe by a German woman, a German psychic, who is, you know, working with first a group of Fallschirmjäger, and then, you know, kind of on her own. And this is a woman, she's an SS Oberhelfer. Like, she was trained by the Nazi regime to use her psychic abilities in the story. And I kind of wanted to see if I could do it, right? I kind of wanted to see if I could take someone that was, I mean, you know, we think the Nazis are the ultimate irredeemable in our pop culture consciousness, right? And not just pop culture, but in our sort of shared cultural consciousness because of the events of you know, the wars of the 20th century. And it's almost a cliche that, you know, if your bad guy's a Nazi, oh yeah, of course they're a Nazi, they're a bad guy. So I wanted to see if I could take that and make her redeemable. And there were a couple of technical tricks. I don't know if tricks is the right words, but a couple of technical choices that I made specifically to do that. One of them was at the opening of her own story, I put her in a position to where she commits an act of psychic violence in defense of some defenseless children. That is one thing that, you know, resonates with 90% of the human race. It's like, okay, you protect the helpless, you protect the innocent, you protect those who can't protect themselves. I'm not saying that in and of itself is enough to redeem a character, and it wasn't in her case either. I mean, the entire book is her redemption arc, right? But it was a starting point, and it was something that allowed the audience to start thinking of her as more than just the big bad. She became someone with complex motivations and someone with her own point of view, if that makes sense. Yeah.
So then we can it's almost easier to have those tricks, right? To
it's a lot easier to use those tricks.
And that's part of what this is like, there are tricks to do it.
Yeah.
There are tricks to making somebody redeemable who might be considered irredeemable, that kind of thing. On the flip side of that coin, how can we write a character that everybody loves to hate that isn't 2D?
So again, you got to look at their motivations. Why are they acting the way that they are, right? Because what we hate about characters is are the things that they do. The things that they do are what push us to either love them or hate them.
Yeah.
But the motivation behind the things that they do and how much the creator allows us to see those things really informs the way that we love or hate them, right? So the classic example of a character, and it's funny that you bring this up, because one of my favorite panels, and I've done it at a couple of conventions now, is the a-hole panel, as we affectionately call it, where we talk about these characters that we love to hate, right? And one of the best ways to do it, if you're talking about just to clarify, right now I'm talking about characters that they do these things that we don't like, that we would consider irredeemable, right? Like, I don't know, slaughtering a bunch of youngling Jedi or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's something that's beyond the pale. We as a society, as humanity, don't like it when characters do that. And I don't want to make this about Star Wars, but there are ongoing debates not about the act that, did Anakin Skywalker do that, because we know that he did, but there are ongoing debates about his motivation. And was his motivation enough to explain that, to still allow him to be a sympathetic character? Or was that the action that outran the theoretical punt cover or figurative punt coverage of the motivation? You know what I mean? To make it so that he's beyond the pale. Characters who do despicable things but have understandable and relatable reasons for them can get away with a lot, like a lot, right? And not everything, but quite a bit. And it's the digging down and getting to the motivation of the character and making it something that is profound enough and universal enough that the audience that's going to resonate with the audience. That's what makes them a character that we love to hate, or love and hate, I guess I should say. Because there's also the characters that we hate just because they're terrible. They're terrible people. Like you root for them to die, right? Some fantastic examples of that in George R. R. Martin's work in the subsequent HBO series of Game of Thrones, right? Two off the top of my head are Joffrey Baratheon, and then what's his name? The Bolton kid. Ramsay Bolton.
Oh, Ramsay.
Yeah, because they do. They're horrendous little psychopaths who just torture people because they can, right? Their motivation is not something. It's not like, oh, I'm doing this as revenge for anybody. There's no connection in the motivation. Their motivation is because it's fun, right? And so that's what we use. That's something that we collectively tend to put in the despicable category, and makes it so that like we root for something terrible to happen for these characters. We cheer when, spoiler alert for a 10-year-old series, we cheer when Joffrey drinks the poison wine and chokes on it at his own wedding. And then we cheer when we find out, that Olenna Tyrell is the one who did it and claims it and is proud of it, because we sympathize with her, because her motivations, she poisoned a teenage boy. That's pretty freaking despicable on his wedding day. And he's a king. All of those things are despicable. But we cheer for her because her motivations made sense. Because he was not going to be a good ruler. He was not going to be a good husband to her granddaughter. He was not going to be good for anybody. So she did what, in our eyes as the audience, she had to do. And that's what makes us identify with her and cheer for her and resonate with her. It's all about the motivation.
Yeah, and I was gonna say you kind of beat me to the punch a little bit, but
sorry.
You're good. Back to the Vader example, right? Mm-hmm. Vader is a bad guy that we love to hate because he has some really amazing scenes in the original series, and then they managed to pull some of those back down the road. But on the flip side, Sidious, nobody wants to see more of him, right? And it's not because we think he's a terrible character in general, like that we just don't want to see him in the movies. Leaving the sequelogy out, but the fact that you don't want to see him redeemed. You want him to be the guy that Vader turns on, and they do so well about making him that completely hateable character, where you don't even. Every time you see him, you're just like, why? Why do you still exist? Why is somebody not turned on you yet?
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things, true confession, I absolutely adored Darth Vader as a kid. Before the prequels came out, before the sequels came out, just the original trilogy, I was obsessed with Darth Vader. I walked down the aisle to my wedding on my father's arm to the Imperial March because I loved that original series, and I loved the character of Darth Vader. And Darth Vader in the original was the extreme bad guy until his redemption arc. The entire, you could argue that the entire original trilogy is a Darth Vader redemption arc. And that's one of the things that we also love, is we love the despicable characters who manage to experience a redemption. It's got to be through their own actions, but usually it's with also the help of other characters, right? And the situations at hand. So,
Jaime Lannister.
So, speaking of things that piss me off, Jaime Lannister's redemption arc had the potential to be just chef's kiss good, and in the rush to close everything out which I understand existed for economic and other reasons, in the rush to close everything out in the last series, that was one of the things that hurt my personal feelings, was the fact that they basically said, yeah, never mind, and just had him not complete that redemption arc.
I would...
You're going to argue with me, but you can be wrong. It's okay.
Yeah. I would say that Jaime Lannister was one of those where they set you up. They set him up from kind of like, not even the second season, halfway through the first season, right? He does the unspeakable thing. He pushes Bran out the window for love. For a love that's supposed to be, absolutely disgusting. And to me, it's one of those where he is the definition of not being able to complete the redemption arc because of the choices he makes down the road. And I think while I really rooted for him at a certain point, I think there is something to be said for the fact that they close that down when he starts making some other choices, because the main piece is Cersei's influence. He was getting redemption when he didn't have her influence.
Right.
And when it was back, he couldn't.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Okay. So yes. So I understand what you're saying, and I mean, Martin hasn't written to that point in the series, so it's entirely possible that that's his plan, is to show him as a failed redemption arc.
Yeah.
Which again is sad, because we love redemption arcs,
yeah.
right? Like we cheer for those. We cheer for the bad guy who comes back and does the right thing or makes the noble sacrifice or whatever.
Yeah.
Cersei is another character that I think there was a great potential there for her as someone that we love to hate. Martin did a better job of this in the books than I think that the series did. And again, this could be easily laid at the fact of changing formats, right, between the written word and the visual TV show series format. But Cersei's motivation from the beginning in the books was always, it was all about her children. Yeah. Everything she did was to protect and advance the cause of her children, which again is something that we as humans respond to, right? I mean, I use that all the time in my narratives because I'm a mom, and so it's something that's very very close to my own personal motivations for everything that I do.
Yeah.
So that resonated with me, and I think it would have been cool to see that played up a little bit more in the show, because the way that they ended up doing it, and I think they tried to do it, but the way that they ended up doing it, it was like she was focused solely on Joffrey until Joffrey was dead, and then she was focused on Tommen.
Yep.
And so it became less about her children and more about her connection to power, which, to be fair, was also important to her in the books, but it wasn't her prime motivator. Her prime motivator was always the cause of her children. And if we could have seen that was the case for all three of her children the whole time, but again, that's very difficult. That's a very difficult thing to show in the visual format, because as opposed to the written one where you can actually see inside the character's head. Yeah.
So that leads us a little bit to, we got into some very specific examples, but the motivations of characters. And then we talk about love to hate, love to love. Those are the kinds of characters that, we start to see the audiences resonate with, so much so that we start seeing cosplays.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there is this thing, and people may be wondering, why am I talking about character building on a world building podcast? Well, it is a part of your world. It is a piece that has to be built. And so it's a good thing to talk about, because finding the motivations, which is the key piece there, and finding which motivations are going to get the response you want, but mixed with a particular set of actions, drives that, the root word of fanatical response to those characters that then drags out, there's still brown coats out there constantly, right?
Yeah.
There are still Star Trek, Star Wars characters constantly cosplayed. And you see that with animes now too, where even some of the newer animes will catch characters right away.
Oh yeah.
So how do you go about, what tools do you use to kind of pair the motivations and the actions And do you know what kind of response you're going to get, or are you guessing? And
I kind of know. So the truth of the matter is, I am my first audience member, right? So I know how I'm going to respond to something. And if I get the response that I want from myself, that's usually a pretty good indicator that my audience, who is, mostly people like me in one way or another, right?
Yeah.
That they're going to have a similar response, or at least in the neighborhood, right? Yeah. But one of the things that I kind of want to key in on something that you said here a minute ago about, why are we talking about character building on a world building podcast? Because the truth is, not only, obviously characters are a part of the world that you're building, but your world building really strongly informs what the motivations that you're choosing for your character are going to be. And the choices that your character makes really informs the world building that you're doing around it. And I'll give you a recent example from my own career. I have a book coming out from Baen Books this summer, probably May. Working title is Mage Light. It's the first book in a fantasy adventure series. And as a fantasy series, it's got a magic system in it, right? And when I was going through developmental edits with Toni Weisskopf, who's the publisher at Baen Books, she asked me a bunch of questions about the world building and about how the society functioned. Because the truth is, when you have the ability to do magic, that's going to change the way society functions in a lot of ways, right? You could argue all ways, but certainly in some very visible ways. And in this particular case, one of the themes that kind of runs through this story is that of like family dynamics, and because that's something I love to play with, family dynamics and inheritance, and who has babies and who doesn't have babies. And so in the world building is where I had to find kind of the root of some of those answers of, okay, well, why don't sorceresses tend to have children? Is it because they're practicing magic? Is there something about the magic system that makes it difficult for them to have children? Or is it a cultural thing? These were all choices that I had to make. And before I made them, the world building didn't ring as true. And it didn't make as much sense. The story didn't come together. It didn't tie it together as well. So the world building, maybe it's an important part of finding the root of those, like I said, those motivations, because that's the environment your characters grow up in, right? And we are shaped, in fact, by our environments quite a bit. So
yeah. So we're doing this in person, so we don't have a share screen ability.
Sorry.
Which is fine. We'll link to some of these things in the show notes, and probably down the road when we do another character building episode, we'll be able to pull some of this stuff up. But what tools do you use to help you keep track of all this?
Oh, good question. So it varies by project, honestly. For my space opera series, of which you've written stories in, and I hope to see more from you in, I actually use World Anvil. I have a World Anvil Pro account and a continuity editor that works with me on that to kind of keep track of those things and creates character sheets and stuff. I also personally, internally to me, I also use Notion quite a bit. I'll do that for my projects overall. And within my project page on Notion, one of the things that I like to do is create, again, sort of character sheets. Because the thing is, and Marisa, I didn't think about this until Marisa said it on a different podcast, but Marisa is Marisa Wolf, my frequent co-author and best friend. And she and I met each other while very embarrassingly writing Pern fan fiction together on the internet. But that being said, there are a few things that writing fan fiction can do for you, and one of the things that it is very, very good at doing for you is teaching you how to create characters.
And that's the end of another episode. Thank you to Kacey for doing that while we were vacationing down in North Carolina at the Final Factory Con. It's been a year and a half now since we recorded that episode, and this is a re-release, and we'll have another one, and we'll talk about that here in a sec. But we hope you enjoyed talking about the character building. I know we came in hot and
furious on some of your favorite characters or not so favorite characters. Sorry for all the hot takes and the controversy. But you know, controversy builds character. I'm terrible, I know. If you like what you see, make sure you follow all of us on our different websites and social medias. In the next 2 weeks, we'll bring back It Builds Character Part 2, Kacey Ezell returns. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast. And as always, thanks for helping us tear the worlds asunder. Hey, we'll see you next time.